Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're just gonna have a little chat about some things that I've been finding really interesting, some current world problems revolving around food security, food safety, some GMOs, and just some interesting things I've learned recently. I hope you will enjoy. Let's get to it. First up, I'm a little bit late to this one. I know it's been in the news for a while, but I just saw a couple of days ago the Omnibus bill. Have you guys seen that? I'm minimally read on it. I will just preface this with that. But basically, recently there was a bill passed and it had some things slipped into it, as they do. And one of those things was some money set aside for electronic cattle tagging. This isn't going to have any kind of immediate severe ramifications from what I can tell, from what I've gathered, but it does seem like the start of a slippery slope to me. We already have ear tags in cows for crossing state lines for disease control purposes. Maybe I'm way off base, and if you have a compelling argument, I'd love to hear it. If you are really well read on this subject, like, educate me, let me know in the comments, tell me your thoughts on this bill. But to me, I just felt a little bit right off the bat like this is just another step in the wrong direction. We don't need this. And trying to support big ag overseas agriculture and not really supporting small US farmers, which we need to support our small farmers. We need to support our local agriculture so that we do not have these massive food chain issues, which is just a reoccurring hot button topic for the last few years, right? The food supply chain, food shortages. It is really, really important, and it's such a fragile system. And every year in the spring when I'm seed starting and there's all this new life and excitement, it does really weigh heavy on my mind, these topics of just food security, but also like seed sovereignty, all the GMOs. There's also a video on YouTube by Facts Matter with Roman. I thought that he did a really good job just kind of mostly unbiasedly summing it up, telling you kind of the facts and what's going on.
Now, while seemingly random and easy to ignore, Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, he doesn't see it that way. Instead, after learning about this provision, he issued a warning about how these ear tags might eventually be used to electronically track livestock across the entire country in an effort to limit the consumption of beef. Hidden in this week's Omnibus, lobbyists got $15 million to implement electronic tracking of all cattle in the US. No law authorizes this. It will be used by the Green Agenda to limit beef production and by the corporate meat oligopoly to dominate small ranchers.
Definitely food for thought. It's kind of something interesting I want to keep my eye on. I'll link that video if you want to check it out. It'll be in the description. I thought it was a really good summary. So moving on from Omnibus, I recently also saw an interesting thing about GMO cheese. And this was new to me. It's not super new that it's been happening, but it was new information to me. Pfizer actually makes GMO rennet, which if you're a cheesemaker and you're in that space, you know what that means. But basically, rennet is traditionally derived from an animal stomach, specifically an animal stomach that has not started eating grass. It's still exclusively eating milk. It produces special enzymes that coagulate the milk and turn it into hard-cured cheese. And you could also do this with a few types of plants. That's especially common in like sheep's and goat milks, where you have that vegetable rennet. But anyway, now Pfizer has been manufacturing a genetically modified rennet. And it is just marked as vegetable rennet. It's not disclosed on any of the labels that it is GMO. It's just lumped in there with any other vegetable rennet. So something that I'm kind of keeping an eye on now. I always buy my cheese in bulk from Azure Standard. I have for many, many years. It's just a great place to find good prices on raw cheese. I really like a good raw cheddar cheese. So I've been doing that for a while anyway, but I had to go investigate. I was so nervous about my cheese all of a sudden. And I went and I looked, and sure enough, it said vegetable rennet, but they cannot use a GMO vegetable rennet in an organic product. So that is something to look for, something to consider. if you're looking at cheese and you are trying to avoid GMO products, it could be in the rennet. Mind blowing. That GMO is so sneaky, and just one more place that it's trying to hide. But be vigilant, my friends. If you are trying to avoid GMO, go for an organic cheese. And I'll link my favorite Azure Market raw organic cheddar in the description if you want to check that out. Sorry, little tea break. And cute mug, my little charcuterie mug. If you guys have not checked out my storefront, check it out. I have this and many other darling products on my website in my storefront. Check it out at apinchofpatience.com. So on this GMO, food sovereignty, food freedom kind of train, I wanted to just talk a little bit about how important it is for us to have our own seed supply. This is something that I've been really passionate about for a long time. It's one of those rabbit trails that the more I think about it, the more I feel compelled to share it. If we don't have real seed, then we don't have food. If we do not have animals that can reproduce, plants that can reproduce on their own, non-genetically modified, actual plants and animals that can produce, we lose our ability to create our own food. And if you control the food, you control the people. And it's such a slippery slope when we start going into giving up our seed sovereignty, right? And GMOs have such a potential to be just catastrophic and detrimental to our seed sovereignty, because we have wind pollination, we have insect pollination, and when you have GMO contamination in your seed crop, your seeds can still probably grow, but there's been a kind of tricky precedent set in the US. At least on a commercial scale, it hasn't infiltrated the home garden yet, but GMOs are patented. It's considered intellectual property. And if somebody's GMO crop contaminates your heirloom open pollinated crop, you are legally held at fault, not the person who contaminated your perfectly good open pollinated seeds, which again just blows my mind. This seems so wrong, but this is the world we are living in. If somebody, Monsanto, say, if their GMO corn contaminated my gorgeous heirloom open pollinated corn, I would be held liable if I saved seed and replanted that, and they could show that I had stolen their genetically patented material. So they could take away all my seed, they could sue, I could be in really big trouble at no fault of my own. And that is really bothersome to me. I try not to really dwell deeply on things that are outside of my control, right? I don't think that that's helpful, and we don't need unnecessary stress in our lives. There's just no good that can come from really obsessing about things that are outside of our control. But I do think it's something that we should be aware of. Burying your head in the sand never helped anybody either. So it is something that I think if you can support open pollinated, non-GMO seeds, seed stewardship, if you can save some of your own seeds, that is a huge step in the right direction. And just spreading awareness and education about this. This is the first year that GMO crops have been available to home gardeners. I don't know if you guys saw that earlier this year. There was a beautiful purple tomato that was available for home gardeners to buy, and it was GMO. That's the first GMO product that has been available for home gardeners everywhere to purchase. It just feels like, again, the start of something dangerous. Like right now, it's probably not a big deal. A few people are going to grow these GMO tomatoes. It's probably not going to be a huge genetic drift. But what happens next? It's just going to be more and more, and you have more potential for genetic drift, more potential for copyright lawsuits. It just kind of snowballs because it's so hard to control the genetic drift, the pollination, right? You have insects, you have wind. There are so many ways that this genetic material can spread. So it's just kind of a slippery slope, and something that I find really interesting and think about sometimes. So food for thought. Let me know what you guys think about that as well. And speaking of corn and GMO things, corn is one of my favorite things to grow. I have some videos about corn that are quite a bit older. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but I was growing painted mountain corn for a few years. Loved it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It grows really well even up here in my northern conditions. And it's just so tasty. It's a flour type corn, which is really different from what we usually have been exposed to, right? Commercial corn is usually dent or flint. We have cornmeal, and then there's some corn flour, but it's like, I don't know, it's not the greatest. But a flour type corn is just so different and so lovely to work with. It's just all soft, starchy, more like what we would get out of a wheat product. Really, really lovely, and I've really enjoyed that. And I had the privilege of chatting with Dave Christensen, who bred this beautiful corn for us northern gardeners. And he's really passionate about resilient seeds, right? Seeds that can survive harsh conditions, that can feed you in uncertain times. And I bought some of his Montana Morado maize this year. So it is something that he bred out of his Painted Mountain line. And it is this beautiful, dark purple black corn. I planted half of my corn patch yesterday and it poured rain, which is amazing. But I have to plant the other half today, and I didn't want my germination to be off. I don't know. I was feeling bad for the corn that missed out on the rain, so I'm giving it a little tiny pre-soak, but that's not strictly necessary. Anyway, this corn is gorgeous. It is so high in anthocyanins, which we've talked a little bit about before, like on my elderberry syrup video. Anthocyanins are so wonderful for your body. They are so detoxifying. They help support your immune system. They help fight against cancer. They're an amazing antioxidant to have in your foods. So, you know, purple potatoes, elderberries, all these purple foods, purple carrots. I will link Dave's website in the description so that you can get seed from him directly if you so wish. I think he's an amazing plant breeder. He's out in Montana, if you couldn't tell by the name of his corn, and he just does some fantastic work. So if you want to support him and you want to try a really wonderful, vigorous, healthy, open pollinated grain corn, I think you should definitely give it a shot, because growing grain is such a great way to establish just another tier of your food freedom if you can grow that quantity of your own calories. And corn is really great calorie per square foot yield. It's easy to harvest by hand. It's one of those like survival garden crops that I think if you have the space, everybody should be growing a little patch of corn. Another thing I've been incorporating this year is mushrooms. I've grown mushrooms in the past. I've done probably 2, maybe 3 years of mushroom experimentation, and I just kind of restarted my mushroom experiments with these pink oysters. And you guys already said you really want to see some videos on mushroom cultivation, so those are coming your way, fear not. Also, I've been making this delicious mushroom powder for seasoning. It's got mushrooms, obviously, pink oyster mushrooms, thyme, mustard, garlic, some salt, and some kelp. So these are some things. If you guys want a video on how to make mushroom powder, let me know. But I am almost ready to start posting some videos on growing mushrooms. We're going to be inoculating a wine cap bed here in a little bit. I've been doing a lot of fun experimenting with these oysters, cultivating them indoors, and then throughout the summer I'll do some outdoor cultivation as well. So that'll be super fun. And one final note about things that I've learned recently that shook my idea of the world. This is not a potato seed. As many of us do, I thought that this was a potato seed. This is a seed potato. We all concur, yes? It has little eyes. This is a seed potato. But it's not. It's not seed. I did not know that potatoes could actually make real seed. Real itsy bitsy, teeny tiny potato seeds. This is super cool and something new I'm experimenting with here. True potato seed. It's really fun, and I've kind of fallen down this little trail all about TPS, and it's been really fun. I'm growing some little true potato seeds right now. They're teeny tiny babies, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what those bring. You get such genetic diversity, and again, going back to this food freedom, food sovereignty, and that resilience in our food supply, I think that growing things from seed is so important. When you're growing from a tuber, I've learned, you just have a lot more susceptibility to disease and to weakness. It's like all things in genetics. You keep making copies of copies of copies of copies, and each generation, it gets slightly degraded, right? So you're losing quality over time. You're not adding anything new. The plant isn't really learning and gaining new information. It's going to just become weaker and more disease prone. When we are saving the seed, we can select really quickly for traits that are disease resistant, traits that are drought tolerant, traits that are cold tolerant. Whatever your specific conditions are, a plant will actually adapt pretty quickly. So within a few generations, you can have a regionally adapted and robust variety that is uniquely qualified to thrive in your conditions, and even so far as within your gardening style and your preferences. So if you like aquaponics, or you like a Ruth Stout garden like I do, or if you're a really low input, or if you use a ton of compost, like whatever your personal style is will even affect the seeds that you are saving from generation to generation. They will adapt to thrive with what you give them and in their environment. So I think that is super cool, and I'm really excited to experiment with true potato seed and see what kind of fun, funky potatoes we end up with this year. I think this is gonna be super fun. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me on this little ramble about some current world problems, some weird things with food, and just my rant about food and how important it is that we grow our own and have the ability and the capability to grow our own. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. Do you enjoy videos like this? Do you want to see more kind of informal just chats? I love this, being able to just talk to you guys and hear your feedback and chat with you guys in the comments. So for me, this is really fun, but let me know what you think about all of these topics, and I'll see you guys next time.